Hey guys, as you can tell from your screen here, that we're gonna do a little build on this Jonsbo D31 mesh case. When I start this build, basically I have no prior experience of this particular case whatsoever. I'm just exploring this case as you guys are, and we'll see how easy this case will fit on my components. And yeah, we'll start with the build in a bit. Alright, I got the case outside from the box, and from what we see here, we got a little screen that is gonna be installed onto the case. And on the back of this particular screen, you can see we have a mini HDMI port that you have to plug into the back of your either graphics card or the motherboard HDMI connector. And then you'll also have the USB-C connector to power the screen. On the other side, you're going to see a standard HDMI cable and a Type A USB connector. Basically, you'll have to put this onto the front like so, and then route everything to the back and plug into the back of your motherboard. There is, according to its design, it's supposed to have some sort of pass-through that you can route these cables through. If you look in the back here, you have these little two holes that you could probably run the cable through. So for every single build, what I like to do is I like to pretty much disassemble the entire case, just so I can have access to everything. So this little mesh guard, it's magnetic, it's on the bottom, and just clip it like so. So I'll take that out. Like a lot of mini mATX case, the bottom usually can be disassembled, but from what I see, it cannot be disassembled due to these rivets. We're gonna slowly taking every single part off. Now we have this glass screen. Obviously handle with care, and when you do take it off, put it somewhere that's safe. You're not gonna kick it. No pets is gonna get to it. And so what I see from here are a couple or a few screws here that, for aesthetics reasons, that they have put in to cover the cable management, which is nice because you're going to see a neater, tighter build. And put that aside, and then get to the power supply. You have to open the front, which in this case I'm just gonna flip it over. You just pop it open like so. the side like so. Now in the front here, now I have access to these screws. That's where it's holding the brackets for the power supply. In this case, I'll just take it off. Now, as you can see, this particular platform supports normal ATX power supply, and I will be using a SFXL power supply for this build. I think the cable runs are just a little bit shorter, and it's probably easier to cable manage. But you do see fingerprints and dirty bits here and there due from the manufacturer, which is fine. And last but not least, we're gonna pop out the top. I'm gonna do it this way. It's quite a bit. Oh, that's where I'm missing. So you gotta pop out these screws on the back. And they said you don't need tools, but you do need tools, because I already need to use a couple of tools to take out a few of the components already. I'm gonna slide it open like so. And for the back, it's a pretty heavy side panel, but pretty rigid. And we're not going to be using a standard 2.5 inch SSD or hard drive any sort, so I'm going to leave that alone. There's also another one here. Now I can probably poke around in the manual to see what other capability or support it can take, but from the hindsight, I only see these ones that supports the 2.5 inch drives, which in modern designs we don't use anymore. Everybody loves to use their NVMe drives. So we get a standard USB, USB-C, headphone jacks, and your front panel headers. It's all pretty standard. I'll turn it around again. Now none of these bits can be now taken off because they're all riveted, as you can see on the corners. Last but not least, I'll need to open this guy over here. That pops open the door, and from I already know I need to use the top 2 slots of this particular case. So I'm going to open it up and prep for my installation. Alright, so that's just a quick disassemble of this particular case. I'll come back in a bit and prep all my components, and I'll show you what will I be using and installing onto this case, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, I gathered all the parts for today's PC build. Going from my last video, we're starting off with a 13900K, and as you can see, I already apply thermal paste and all the other components on it. We are running a Team Group DDR5 RAM. That's 32 gigabyte RAM sticks. Yeah, pretty much you have probably seen this a few times already. For its storage, because this is not going to be a gaming PC, so I don't need that much of a space. We're running also a Team Group Z44A series solid state. It is a budget SSD by all means. It's not anything crazy. And we also have our Thermalright 360AL, which I already replaced the fans with Arctic cooling fans, just because they run a little bit quieter. And over here we're going to be installing this 3070 Ti from MSI as the Gaming X Trio, which on one of my videos I have replaced these fans to be quieter. And last but not least, we're going to be running this Corsair SF100L power supply. I know the case itself can support ATX power supply, but I'm not a fan of its long cables that come along with the ATX power supplies. So I've opted for this particular power supply because it's actually on sale back on Black Friday, and for its price, it's definitely suitable for this particular build. So I'm gonna start off probably just install the motherboard onto the case first. But before that, I want to do a quick comparison of the case compared to an actual mini mATX case, and I'll be right back. So as you guys see from this particular case, this is a mATX case. It is really roomy. If you weren't paying attention, you would have thought this would be a mini ATX case, or should I say small form factor ATX case, but no, it's a mATX case. But I have a Liang Li, what is it, Q58 case, which I have been doing some sort of repair on one of my other PC. But this case can literally sit inside of this case flush, no problem. There's definitely benefits having this much of space. Obviously is easier for a PC build. Basically you're gonna be running quite a bit of roominess and space, and not only that, for the 13900K I'm actually quite uncomfortable to run the 240 AIO, which is supported in this particular case, just because I want it to be a quieter build. And also in this particular case, the old ITX case I have here is that it can only support, like it will support SFXL power supply, but I wouldn't put that in here just because you're gonna run into a lot of space problem while building in this case. And in this particular build, I don't even need to have a PCIe riser cable, which actually saved me quite a bit of hassle. It's going to be a pretty simple installation. Now, without cutting the video, I'm actually going to start install the motherboard and its components into this case. So I took my time to actually take out all the screws that's required for this installation. So we got some PSU screws. They're the big hex screws we'll be using to install onto these locations of the power supply here. And we also have some SSD screws, which in our case we're not installing any SSDs, or at least 2.5-inch SSDs. And we're going to be using some of these motherboard screws. They do look different compared to all the other ones. So since we're only using an ITX motherboard, we only need 4 of these. It does come with a handy little standoff tool, so we can, relocate these standoff. As a personal opinion, I'm not going to remove these extra standoff for the mATX build. Not that crazy for the aesthetics, and it's just easier for the future upgrade or install if I have to replace the motherboard for something else. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave those standoff alone. Now, typically what I usually do is I always want to pre-test some of these screws. Just make sure you don't cross thread as you are screwing in. So just, simple, easy hand twist. See how easy it'll go in. And you know that they're the right screw. Depends on the case manufacturer, that might end up deciding to use like these big hex screws, or they'll use these smaller SSD screws, and that's why I tend to do this, just for some habit, to make sure they go into the standoff easily. So yeah, easy peasy. That'll go in no problem. Now, typically I would just start with the motherboard, because if I were need to manipulate the case, I don't really want to have to deal with extra weight. So for example, if you were plug in the power supply or install the power supply, or you would put the AIO up on top, if you were moving the case around, you're going to have things dangling and extra weight you have to manipulate. And for me, because this is a pretty big case, I I actually don't need to manipulate it that many times in this particular installation. Now we're gonna hide these cables on the bottom first. At some point we're gonna pull them out to the front. Oh, cat hair. You don't believe how these cat hair get to places. Alright, first thing first, we're gonna grab our motherboard. So, as you can tell, I have already pre-installed the Thermalright backplate for the motherboard for the AIO cooler. And once you have already preseated that, in my opinion, this is probably the best way to do it, because then you don't have to worry about manipulate into flipping the case around to manipulate this backplate. So once you have that sitting there, I would just put in the screws like we just found a few minutes ago. So these screws, so we're gonna put the screws in. So you're gonna run into sometimes is that it's gonna cross thread as you're screwing it into. So I made a little mistake of screwing this one too tight. So I can manipulate the motherboard spacing just a tiny bit so I'm not cross-threading as I'm screwing these screws. So remember how we just hand tied them a little bit earlier? And I just want to make sure that when the screws and the stand up, when they are coming up from the manufacturer, sometimes they'll have a little bit of defect. This way you could run it with your hand. Just want to make sure everything goes in smoothly before you actually put the screws in. So with the last screw in, I can just tight up the rest. So as you can see, I have a whole bunch of space over here. So that just leaves me a little more space to run cables, not over here but over in this hole. It does look awkward in my opinion to have a ITX motherboard in a mATX case, because to be honest, I would love to have a little bit more SSD slots. So in this particular motherboard, I can only get 2 out of it. On typical mATX board, you could get 3. So I do lose in that opinion and that side, but it's okay. I mean, we can always do a future upgrade or something along in the range of that, and then yeah, we can go from there. But motherboard is in. So next thing you know, next thing I would do is I would pop in SSD, because that's, you know, the simple way to get at it. Definitely didn't want to make these SSD easy to pop out from its packaging. A little bit of stiff there. I want to cut myself and close that. Oh, wrong size bit. And I'm gonna go for one size bigger and that one. Honestly, it does look very awkward. And I kind of wish they make a Z790 like Strix style or Z690 style, so mATX motherboard. But honestly, this is all about being budget conscientious, and I'll get what I can get. You know what I mean? I do like the Asus design. So as you can tell, there are newer SSD mounting mechanisms out there. For this particular one, it's just one of the twisty ones. So I just peel off the bottom thermal pad protector, I guess, plastic. And I'll peel off this one. So once it sits in there, it's going to be quite sticky. Oh, upside down. And then we'll just screw it down. Doesn't like to be. Come on, you could go in. There we go. Alright, let's screw this guy. Now, typically, if you were installing this ATX case or whatever, you might want to have the tower cooler already installed while you put that inside the case. In my case, I'm running an AIO. I'm gonna just kind of how I say, do it afterwards. But there is one thing I actually want to do before I install the AIO on top, is actually run some of these cables first. So for example, the CPU cable down up here, just so it make my life a little bit easier, because the AIO is going to sit right about here and you're not going to have much of a space to run that cable. Alrighty. So zip ties, to be honest, I'm not a great cable management guy, but when I do have a chance to cable manage, I would use Velcro instead of zip ties. That's kind of my preferred method to cable manage. We'll take the power supply out. It's still quite tiny. And don't be like me, put coffee on the table while building a PC. You can very easily knock it over. Now, we can also do some pre-cable selection. also do need the ATX adapter bracket for the power supply. So pre-cable selection, it just means that what cable is going to be using, right? So we're going to need to have a CPU cable. They have a second one in here we don't need. They also have the motherboard. I would say the motherboard power cables. We don't need the Molex power. We need a PCIe power cable for the graphics card, but usually I like to run 2 of them just because in the future when you do decide to change graphics card, you don't have to run and find, you know, another one of these to install. So I'll find another one of these. So we also need a SATA power cable because we're going to be running that pump using that particular power headers. We don't get to need the 12 volt high power cable because our graphics card doesn't have it, doesn't need it. But if you are definitely running the 40 series cars, you will need this this cable instead of the PCIe cables. Now, typically for Crosshair, as I remember, there are versions of this where there's less headers or less connectors. So I'm actually gonna dig into it to see if I can find a different version of this. So see how this one kind of designed differently compared to this one. So this one is designed for you to daisy chain like hard drive cables because you could just put them like this. Now this one is more for you to kind of run them a little bit a longer run, I suppose. But they do practically do the same thing. But in my case, I'll probably end up using this one instead of this one. And here goes the second PCIe cable. And there's also a variant of that too on this power supply. You see there's 2 and there's 1. I typically prefer the 1, so I don't know I come with another one with a single head. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's 2 of these. I will use this instead of that one just because I can use 2 dedicated cables and push into the graphics card. So I've already pre-selected all the cables. I think that's everything I need. I'm gonna put them aside. So like I said, 1 cable you need to pre-run for this particular build is the CPU. It would just make your life a tiny bit easier if you're, getting to try to get your fingers around. Now, typically these cables are shorter, so I do have another ATX power supply in standby in case I'm running cable length issues with this SFX L power supply, just because this case is huge. I don't know why they couldn't just make it tiny bit taller. Just call it an ATX case. But yeah, because you could see that it runs all the way down here pretty much. All you have to do is maybe push this up a little bit and move that out a little bit, and then you could put ATX in this case. But it's okay. I still like this case. I like the concept with the screen in the front, especially you're into like you know, just needed a second screen for some sort of like project monitoring or just so as you can tell, I'm already running into length issue here. So I don't think I can use this power supply in this case, just because of the cable length. I can probably run it this way. Like right over in the front. Like that. But I just don't like it. And this is why I do pre-cable management. Nothing worse than, you know, install everything and then all of a sudden you find out your cable is too short. So we're gonna do a little bit of upgrade on this. We're gonna put this power supply aside, and because typically you want to mount it like this, and you're definitely not gonna have enough length for everything, not for the CPU. But with that said, if you have cable extensions, that would definitely work fine with this particular setup, because you're gonna have extra length from the cable extensions, or if you have custom cables. But for me, I don't have those. But what I do have is an extra ATX power supply that was open boxed, and I would like to just use that instead. So the reason why it is open boxed is this particular power supply was actually damaged in shipping, and I got it for a fraction of its price. So I have actually put on a power supply tester to see if it's working or not. But if you don't have the means to test this power supply, I won't use it. But for me, since I have tested, I know it's good to go. So in this particular case, I'm still needing to run that cable again. See how roomy this thing is? There's my power cable. This is the PCIe cable. That's the motherboard power cable. So PCIe, it comes with two. This one comes with two. I don't want the twos. Obviously, I just explained from before. I don't need this one. gonna put that aside. I don't need that. So I'm not gonna really play with the Crosshair IQ stuff on this through this power supply, so I'm not gonna use that cable. That's another PCIe cable. So this is the CPU. That's what we need. And that's another CPU. We don't need that. Molex. And a third CPU. I don't know how many motherboard actually support 3 CPU headers, but it's okay. So we need 2 of these, 1 of these, and we're going to pre-run 1 of these. Alright, now we know this one will fit because they're in the ATX length. So as you can see, there's a little bit of pressure because it was damaged from before. So I'm not going to use this cable, I'm going to find a new one. So that's what you get for buying like open boxed damaged items on Amazon. You can never know what you get. So I think this one is a better shape. Gonna plug this header in there. Run that through the back. Alright, we're going to run it all the way to the back of this. Now since I already have everything flipped over, I'm actually going to plug in all the headers onto the motherboard. Now because I'm not sure if I explained this, most of the header are actually over by this module over here. I'm actually going to run it over here. I can run it over here. To be honest, I like to do this just so that in future upgrades or anything like that, I can always have somewhat of easy access to my cables. So when I do swap it out with, let's say, an mATX motherboard, I can just pop it out and plug everything in and pop it back in, and for this, I'm going to plug into the USB header. They give you quite a bit of slack, which is fine, but you just have to cable manage it later. You plug in the USB-C header. If you pay attention to how the header sits, is that it can only go in one way. A notch on this side is bigger than a notch on this side, and the notch on this side is the same on notch on that side. So if you actually look into the header, it can only go in one way. So if you try one way and doesn't want to go in, you should flip it over and try the other way. So in my case, it's in. So I'm gonna actually flip it the other way, see, to demonstrate. See how it doesn't want to go in at all. It can only go in one way. Now we have our front audio headers, and in this case it's all the way on the side here. Now, see, this module tends to give you some benefit just because you can take it out and look at your required pins and then plug in accordingly. So over here, I know for a fact the power pin goes over there, and then to the opposite of that is the reset, but we need the power LED, so I'm going to look at that, and power LED plus is on this side and negative on that side, and just have to plug it in like so. It's kind of weird because this orientation used to be like this on a motherboard, and I flip it over and it just looks awkward. But you know what, I'm gonna double verify using the owner's manual. So that's your front header, and for our build I'm not going to be running any of the RGB stuff. I just don't think it's needed. So we're going to go through and find the pinouts for the front header. So we're almost here. Okay, yeah, so if you look at that, just count the one with the 5 pin. So if you sit on the 5 plane, you're gonna have the reset and hard drive LED, and on the bottom, on the 4 pin, you have your power button and power LED. So if you look at my setup here, it should look like this, and my guess was correct. I got it correctly. So never hesitate to pull out your owner's manual, especially you're working with a motherboard that's non-really standard, and you might run into issues if you don't follow the correct pinouts. Alright, so everything's plugged in. So the only thing I'm a little bit concerned of is this cable, because when my GPU goes in, it's gonna come in right against of that. So anything I wanted to plug into here, I need to plug in now, because I'm not gonna have much of a space to work on it later. So the only thing I would think I'll need is actually this fan header, but I'm pretty much going to do a simple just pole design, a negative pressure design onto this case. I'm not going to put fans on the bottom, because really this is only going to be a streaming case, streaming PC, and it's not going to really pull that much power, or I'm not going to use it for extended period of time where it's going to be too much heat inside this particular case. So I think just the triple rad in the front, I think it is just enough. So once I have everything plugged in, I'm going to start pulling these cables in the back. Just to make sure they're tucked away. So for me anyways, like I mentioned, I don't like to use zip ties. I like to use Velcro. You can also, if you are, don't have anything, let's say you don't have any zip ties, which you should, and they give you a whole bunch. But if let's say that you don't have this, you can also use the twist down ties. I mean, it's gonna look ugly, but it's definitely not gonna affect any sort of performance or anything. But it just helps you to tuck cables away, right? But in my case, I do have some Velcro laying around. I'm gonna cut some Velcro and use that instead. So I already pre-cut some of this. Honestly, I think this build would be a little bit easier to cable manage if I were using an mATX case, because then the cable route would be actually all the way on the bottom, not in the middle, and that would give me a lot less pain to run these cables. Now, there are a few things I do want to use zip ties on, if I can, or can. So for this particular cable, now I'm running a little bit thinner Velcro today, so I can actually run it into these grommets. A zip tie will actually make this a little bit easier, but for future proofing any sort of like upgrades or anything like that, I think Velcro would be the better option, even though right now is a pain in the bump to run it through. So once you have done that, just tuck it in a little bit, and then there we go. Now it's kind of in place. It's not going to be running away or anything like that. Alright. So next bit of installation, I think it'd be easier for you to install the AIO now. So since you have pretty much everything in its location, and for me, I have already applied a little bit of thermal paste from previous tests, so I'm not gonna actually like repaste everything. So what I'm gonna end up doing is put this in place like so. Once I'm ready, I'm going to put a little tag of thermal paste onto the CPU. I'm just going to install it right on top. So for now, what I need to do is to actually put the AIO in place. So for me, like my previous video, I like to just loosely install these screws, because then you can always kind of relocate it if you had to push it forward or backwards a little bit for compatibility, for space, or for aesthetics, whatever reason that you might have while you're building this. So for me, I'm just gonna, just to run the screw enough that it's in place. But not tight enough so it's gonna be like, torqued down and hard to move. Now, only thing you have to be aware is, depends on these holes. Some of the holes might sit in the middle of this spacing, so you want to like make sure that you're not going to get yourself caught. So in my installation, I actually pushed this outwards because this space is only designed for a 140. Two 140, so 280. Now, there's no way for me to push it in because there's no more mounting holes on this side. So everything's all in. Now, to make my life easier, I'm actually gonna install the pump on, the the CPU block onto the motherboard right away, so it's not gonna be flip-flopping every time I move the case. Now there's a few ways you could install this, because you can see that this is pretty much like all even size, and there's no awkward spacing or anything like that. So you can mount it this way or up or down, whatever, however you need. But for me anyways, is that I found it to be the easiest to just put it in like so. That gave me kind of the most amount of slack, I suppose. But I can also turn it over and move it like this, but it is kind of pushing against the case a little bit, so this is probably gonna hit the glass, so I don't want to have that, so I'm gonna just mount it like so. And plus, now see, I can move it a little bit, so I need a little bit more slack, and I can just push it and give it more slack. Now, for the thermal paste application, you can see there's already a mess down there, but I just need to add in a little bit to kind of make sure it fills the gaps. Don't ever be stingy on thermal paste, because they're non-conductive, so you can always you know, have more is better than less. I won't say the same thing if you're running liquid metal, but for normal thermal paste, they're non-conductive. It is quite a bit of quite tight of a motherboard to work with, especially in our case, we're running an mATX motherboard. You're gonna feel so much better, so much easier to build in if you actually select the proper size motherboard for this case, which is a mATX motherboard. Oh no, I lost the screw. Where did it go? All right. You know what, guys? Give me a couple minutes. Let me find that screw. I'll be right back. Alright, guys. Took a little break, drank a little bit of coffee, found the screw. Now we're going to continue our installation. Now, what I like to do is kind of give it a nice little tuck. So you know that it's actually sat in properly. this in a star pattern, and don't rush. Oh, there goes my cat. Yeah. Yeah. Alright, so I'm gonna torque it now. Torquing everything down. Alright, so that's all nice and tight. Obviously I did this before, so I need to redo this just to make it nice and neat. Now in my particular case, I have these daisy chained fans. It runs quite nicely with this particular build, I think, because what I can do is to run all of these cables through a one center location. And flip it over. Because I know the fan head resist belt right there, so what I'm going to end up doing is daisy chain them together and just run one cable down the side here. And I'll actually pull all the slack out. And I'm gonna leave as that. And I'm gonna flip it right over. Fine. The CPU header. And you can tell these fans are used. They came from my old PC and they're still good. So now, if you don't have these daisy chain fans, you can actually pre-connect this around to the motherboard before you put the AIO in, because that just gives you more space. But in my case, because I have decided to use these daisy chain setup, I'm just gonna use that instead. And yeah, so tuck everything in there nicely. Now, if you got Velcro or zip ties, probably the best opportunity to just kind of tuck this and you can borrow this other cable as your tie down point, and just give it a little bit of tuck, and then once you have done that, you run this cable the other direction. I'll just cut another strip. Honestly, there's many ways of doing cable management. I think this is my lazy way of doing this. You know, whatever that you guys are comfortable doing or feel like doing. There's no wrong way, as long as it doesn't impede the airflow or the performance of the PC. Any other way is fine. Now, these fan cables are all tucked away. Now, the only thing is, I have this to deal with. So, I'm actually just gonna run it right to the back of this. Run into the middle section again. Like I said, I'm not gonna run RGB, so this is gonna just be sitting back there. In the same time, I have this other cable I have to deal with, so I'm actually gonna pull it right over here to the back, because they're both white cables. I kind of, you know, just like to cable manage them together for some reason. Remember, you still have to plug in this particular cable. So what I do is I'm just gonna run it along with this other one and just tuck it away. Now, this particular cable, you want to kind of tuck it down this way. So we're going to cut another strip of Velcro. I try to run it down. As you can tell, this is still pretty big for the hole, which I think what I'm gonna end up doing is just borrow the other cable as its tie down points and just tight that instead. It's definitely not the best cable management out there, but it will do. Now, so previously from the AO test, this AO come with a little SATA to the 3-pin connector. This is a DC power connector. Okay, I'm gonna need to find it. Alright, so that's the connector. So what you need to do is plug this in. Remember how we pre-select our cables? Where's that Molex? Where's that SATA cable? There's the SATA cable. Now, I'm gonna undo this. Usually, I like to use the very last one. Just is by far has the least like cable kink or stress. You just put it back in like that, tighten like so, and then plug into your power supply like that afterwards. So for this one, I'm not gonna actually tie down anything just yet. I'm gonna wait until everything else gets kind of put into place and then tie that particular cable down. So I'm gonna tuck it out of the place right now. And I know this one needs to go into the power supply. Now, since I got AIO kind of square out of the way, we will need to install this power supply. Now, one big thing I already see right now is that because of this pump here, I am not able to actually put the power supply in there. Now I can definitely squeeze it a little bit, like so. And does it impede the fan? No, it doesn't. And to give it more slack, you could see how I have my AIO still able to move around. Well, that's exactly the reason why I have it loose, just so I can fit them. Now, alternatively, you said, why didn't you just flip the other way? Well, for me, if I flip the other way, all the cables kind of all going to be kinked right up here, and you're going to have hard time access these areas. I still prefer to sit this way. Obviously, you know, depends on AIO and how stiff your cable is. You could definitely put that the other way. Just for me, I just kind of prefer to sit this way. And I think I got myself out of the trouble. Now, there's one more thing I need to do before I actually put everything into place. Is actually test fit this. So once I have this power supply in, I'm going to push just like before. I need to see how much space I have. I do have a little bit more space. Now, there's one other thing you need to be aware of before you actually go ahead and connect the cable. It's actually your graphics card length. Now, if you decide, like me, to put a bigger card in there, does this card fit? And the answer is yes. Barely. The second is I am still gonna have a whole bunch of space, like not much of space here, but I'm gonna tuck all my cables down bottom there. But this is gonna be a tight space to work with. But that's why originally I want to use the SFX L's power supply, because it's going to be a little bit shorter. You're going to have a whole bunch of space to work with, but unfortunately the cable length is not enough. That's one of the issues. Now, for this particular installation, is that because you have no access to the bottom of this, you can't plug in a cable like that. So the only thing you can do right now is pre-cable them. Pre-cable all the cables you think you need. So I'm gonna take the shroud out. We're gonna actually leave the shroud out. Start plugging my first cable, which is the CPU cable. It's going to orientate like this. So I wanted to be able to plug in like so, this way. That's the first cable. Now the second cable I already pre-run is the okay, sorry guys. OBS froze on me. So, well, previously we left off just to connect all the cables, but now I have flipped it over to run a couple more cables. But since I already have it up here, now we already test fit everything. So the I/O I know right now I need it to fit all the way towards the back to have the space for the power supplies to go. So since I know that I need to now have tighten this in place, so I'm not sloshing it back and forth around in a case anymore. Oops. All right, so everything is tight down now. Now, we need to flip it over and run this cable over. To the very bottom. So, I'm also running the issue where this cable is also snitched, because remember, Amazon open items are always bad news. But to be honest, guys, I think I might just not use this power supply, because there's too many nicked cables everywhere. And even though the power supply unit itself it's working fine, but the cable it come along with are just not in the greatest shape. So I have a used Seasonic power supply that I'll probably swap with. That Seasonic power supply I got it when it's brand new, but it was being used on something, but I took it apart. But yeah, so fortunately all the cables are all snagged everywhere, even though the power supply unit itself is good. So I'm actually gonna pause the recording and get that power supply and use that instead. And I'll be right back. Okay guys, I'm back. Finally got the power supply. I pre-located all my cables, and yeah, so we're gonna run a couple of these cables over. It's just kind of fortunate I have everything laid out, and one thing just doesn't work, and follow the next thing and doesn't work properly, and yeah, and then just run into a whole bunch of trouble. But we're back on track. I think we shouldn't be running into any more issues. Now, this particular power supply compared to the Corsair is actually shorter too. So if you're actually would fit this in the case, you're gonna have a little bit better compatibility, or at least a little bit more spacing to work with. So just for demonstration, actually we're not going to demonstrate, we're going to just mount it right away. So for spacing wise, mount the power supply in. Oops. Okay, I'm gonna do this off camera. So this is a 1300 watt Seasonic gold power supply. I've been trying to reserve this for a different type of build, but it's okay. I mean, I have a few spare power supplies here and there to work with or shuffle with, so really it is overkill for this particular build, especially for its, you know, capacity wise. But for cable management, it might help me a little bit, just because I might end up having a little bit more space to work with. And obviously it's gonna run really quiet. Now, so as I'm putting this in together, I gotta make sure the power supply extension cable is plugged in and is turned on, and So this case running this particular AIO is kind of, it's a little bit challenging, like I said, but it's not undoable or doable, or not doable. But it is just kind of annoying how to deal with space constraint. So sometimes you thought you have plenty of space to work with, and all of a sudden you found yourself not having any space to work with. So it's kind of annoying, but it is what it is, I guess. So we're gonna screw in its sides here. Just lift out this side here. I need to mount the last spot. Now, I face the power supply fans outward this way because all of these panels, except the LCD screen on top here, it's all mesh. Obviously the side panels is made of glass, but because it's all mesh, I would like to take fresh air in and then pump it in exhaust through the top, and the air will take the air out. Now, what I need to do is, because we're no longer pre-run our cables because I have to do, a change of power supply, I'm just gonna run these cables traditionally one by one, and hopefully I'm not gonna run into any sort of snag again. So, like I said, pre-running cables will make your life easier. Hopefully I can get this thing in. It's not too crazy of a trouble. Alright, the CPU cable's in. I'm gonna tie down a little bit. Alright, I'm going to quickly flip it over to plug in my 24-pin motherboard header. Now, I'm going to run into quite a bit of space, or loose cables in the front, which I'm I'm gonna tighten up right now. So I'm gonna run this cable. The SATA cable down this way. As much as I can. And I'm gonna leave the 3-piece power cable for the GPU inside the case. Now we can tie down everything. Now, first thing first, I'm gonna make sure I plug in everything. Oops. And then I'm gonna pull this back in a little bit. So, and what it looks like is I want to kind of sit this thing like so. So I think I still need to have a Velcro sits right there to help me cable manage. Well, last time I was having hard time pushing this through. We're gonna try it again. There we go. Now, if you decide to use zip ties, it'll probably make your life easier for the installation. But if you ever have to remove and change things, you're gonna have to cut them. I'm not a fan of cutting them. Now, I can reorganize this particular cable this way again. I can tuck this. I can tuck that way. So, I hope this is kind of getting in the way. All right. Pretty sure I can pull a little bit more slack. Now, I don't need this cable. I'm just gonna use this Velcro to tie down this. I'm gonna need to use this cable. Push it down, push on the side, push all the way, and I'm gonna need to connect that. And I'm gonna tuck everything in place. Now, I do want to put a Velcro here. Just so it's not like splatter everywhere inside this tiny little void space here, because I will need to push more cables later for my PCIe power. Now, hopefully everything kind of just sits there, relaxed, sits there. Nothing has been kinky, but yeah, All right, let that sit in there. I'll flip it around. Now, I'm gonna see if these connectors are all in tight. That's good. I got my power supply cables. Now, this is the last bit of installation. On the inside of this particular case. Now we test fit everything. We know it fits. We just have to find ways to make it fit. It's getting caught on the cables here. Have to persuade it a little bit. And then we'll just I don't like this cable being like that, so I'm gonna actually need to push. Yep, just push that downwards. There's a tiny bit to run this under. It is definitely not the ideal motherboard for this build. Because usually what you can do is that when you have a mATX board, the first slot is actually not being used by anything, so this graphics card will actually sit one slot lower, and that means that you're gonna have a little bit of better spacing of all your components. And it looks awkward because you can't hide these cables, especially your motherboard sits so much in. Now, tighten this. Tighten everything. Now, we got a little bit of slack here. These cables are just, I'm gonna simply just gonna tuck in there like that, just so you have enough slack to run into the graphics card. I think I'm gonna use 2 Velcro just to hold them in place. So I think I'm gonna use the first bit of Velcro for this first bit of section. Tighten it, and I'm going to push in. Now, the second bit of Velcro are for the second section, so I'm actually going to plug this in now. I'm plugging that in now. The second section, I am just gonna try and rotate and push in this way, and then I'm gonna put that Velcro right here, and I'm just gonna tuck it in a little bit more. I think for aesthetics purposes, I know these cables are a little bit rusty or got a little bit dirt on them. Sure, that's fine. But I think we're gonna put that on this way. Give it a little bit more, shorten the stock a little bit. And we're gonna put that in that way. And then just for the final touch, I'm gonna put another Velcro right over here, just to make it look a little bit tidy. And I think that's about it. You know, in the future, if I want to put a fan there, I can also put fans there. But for now, I think that concludes just the majority of the components in here. Now, it's one special feature of this particular motherboard is this, the screen. Now, you can see there's a little cutout here. You can fish your cables in there. And you might want to fish it one by one or two at a time, depends on how small your hands are. Mine are pretty small, I can grab both of them. But, once it's in, I'm actually gonna lay it down. Push that over, and I'm gonna just pop it in like so. Now for this particular run, I just wanted to run right behind the power supply. Now, one biggest problem is because the graphic card is so big, it doesn't give me much of space. So I'm gonna have to fish it through instead of tucking it through. So in this case, I'm doing one cable at a time because there's so little space to work with. And I'm going to tuck in this one the same way. Try fishing it. Now finally, I think I'm ready to replace my stupid laptop because the fan on that particular laptop is so loud, and you probably hear it in the background, and it's driving me nuts too. And hopefully this build is nice and quiet. So remember before I said there's two holes you could get to work with. So I'm going to use those to run the cable. It's kind of funny, like, yeah, you know, this graphics card sits high, but because it sits high, it actually gives quite a bit of space for the cable to run in the bottom. And I do kind of appreciate that, but what I wanted to do right now is actually I want to run it through the back. So one cable through. Get that USB cable through. And pull it, make it nice and neat. Yep. So once it's in the back, then we can actually tuck it along here. And coming in back like so. Pull the other one over like so. And right now I think I can use another Velcro. Gotta put one right here. Obviously, if you guys were buying these Velcros, you probably want to buy them in the proper size. I know there are thinner ones out there you can buy. I mean, Amazon, AliExpress, whichever means you could get these from. You know, you don't have to spend a whole bunch on these things. I think this strip is too long. Now let's trim it. And once that's done, take it to the back. And then grab this one, this guy, and just I think this is the hardest part of the build is run these cables. I think I'm kidding, but kind of is. Just because you have to line two things up at the same time. There we go. Alright. So as part of the design, you are supposed to plug in the USB into one of the motherboard USB headers, and then for me, remember how I got a little bit of extra Velcro? I'm gonna Velcro out right over here, so it's nice and neat. And then you take your little USB, sorry, not USB, but your little HDMI. You plug in or the HDMI on the your graphics card. You can also plug it onto the motherboard if your motherboard supports the integrated graphics, and you have to go into BIOS, enable intergraphics for extra display. But for me, I don't need to do that. I'm just gonna run it this way. I would like to put a Velcro there, but I really don't think I need to. There's not enough cable lead to run one. I'll do one anyways. Or a little short stubby one. Alrighty. So that's it. And then what you need to do is turn it on. You want to put back all the panels. So we no longer need this one anymore because your LCD screen has already placed where this is supposed to go to. But what we need to do now is do the final touches on this particular build, which is the little covers. Don't know, can't remember exactly what direction it's going into. We're going to this way. There we go. That's the right direction. So we have these screws that we're going to pop in that we took out from before. Doesn't that make it nice and neat? But to be honest, guys, this case is big, but because you have to fit the AIO on the top, it makes it small, and you can't run a typical SFX power supply here. Now, if they were, let's say for example, allow you to change the orientation of the power supply like this way, or I'll show you guys. If they allow you to change it to this way on SFX, I think my cables will reach and I can stick with this particular power supply. But we can only put it this way, and not just make it just not enough to reach from here to there, and especially through the back of the case. Now you can definitely run it through the front if you don't care about the aesthetics, but for me, I do have spare parts around, and to be honest, if you just wanted to make it work, you can make this to work. But for me, I do have power supplies and I have alternatives. I do prefer this particular how do I say? I do prefer to have the ATX power supply for this cable lines instead of having to, you know, do ugly cable management. But for this particular build anyways, it's I do want to change into a mATX board at some point instead of the ATX board. But you know, if I find one on sale, I'll probably just pop everything out, do a quick swap, probably a 10-minute swap, and that's it. That'll be so finally we're just gonna pop all these panels back in. It is such a big case for what it can do. I can't see it from the back. Okay, we're gonna turn this around. Alright. The last one of the panels needs to go in. So I think in terms of the panel design, it is kind of a little bit of pain to latch it in. But once it's in, so I think the top panel is not really sitting right, so we're gonna line down once more. It's very hard to line up this case because I don't know, it's me. There's quite a bit of panel gap. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So I'm gonna put the glass in to see. this side. Yeah. So just to show you guys what I'm talking about. I was questioning if I was putting all the panels back in properly. The panel gap I'm referring to is this guy right here. See how there's quite a bit of gap? But it does look consistent from here to here. The only thing is this white is a little bit off white than this. And other than that, the build quality is not that bad. But to be honest, I do enjoy to build in the A4H2O more compared to this. Compared to this guy. Just because there's a lot of compromises for this. I know the H2O have very limited options to build in, but you would think this guy would give you more of an option, but in reality, this particular build doesn't give you that much option either. And alright, so that concludes this video. I hope you guys watch this video. I'll probably give you guys an update later on if I ever upgrade the motherboard. But we'll see you next time.